Okay, I welcome everybody to this session, Recasting the Retail Store and the New Role of Logistics. My name is Thomas Steinmüller, and I welcome you as a CEO of Cap10 AG, a logistics company for consulting in the logistics and the retail area. I welcome also as speakers of this session, David Hickley. He's a global managing director of Hickley and Associates and a global leader in location strategy and labor analytics, supply chain and logistics optimization. And I welcome Lincoln Cavalieri. He is a COO of urbix with a system for vertical automated grocery fulfillment, a very interesting innovation in this area. We have two main developments, actually. We have first the digitization, and the digitization plays a role in the retail area since 10 years, and is more and more important. That's also why I call it retail. Retail, I spell it with RE for real estate, because the location is very important. A small t for transportation and technologies, and AI for artificial intelligence, and small l for logistics. So AI is playing a more and more important role in the retail area, and we have to discuss this. The second development is the distancing due to COVID, to the pandemic developments. And we have to live with these two big developments and to see how this will be conduct the retail area in the future. For this, I will start immediately with Lincoln and a presentation of his system, so we can see how automatization can modify the situation in the retail area. And perhaps you look at this because from a logistics point of view, shops are warehouses with shelves in which customers pick themselves, and they are the logistics companies, the logistics providers themselves, and they do not even ask for money for it. That's the actual situation. And I will highlight a little bit the situation with our grandchildren or future grandchildren. They will ask us why we took so much time and trouble to do our daily shopping, driving to the shop, picking the goods ourselves, queuing at the checkout, and then driving the shopping home, and if necessary, lugging it up to the 5th floor. So this question is to be answered in the future, and I will say, Lincoln, start up with your presentation.
All right, well, thank you for that overview. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Can you guys see? Okay, can you guys see my screen okay?
Yep.
All right, cool. So I'm Lincoln Cavalieri, and this CEO of urbix. We focus on micro fulfillment, on-demand automation for the last mile. So we're automating the pick and pack, predominantly of grocery orders, but for general retail as well. Started this project back in 2016. Initially, first 2 years, people weren't receptive to the idea. They didn't think the grocery store was going to change. They liked their shopping experience, especially here in the States. Through COVID and everything, it's kind of come full circle to where, people want to get their stuff as quickly as possible, want to get their groceries delivered. So there's been a real industry change accelerated by COVID, but it's definitely been a journey since 2016. So I'll dive into a few applications we have. One is Curbside, which is a bolt-on curbside system for grocery stores. So we install an automated system that has around 16,000 SKUs. It starts at 900 square feet, has the 3 temperate zones in the machine. 50 items can be picked and packed in 2.25 minutes, and out for delivery to get to your home in 15 minutes. So curbside fulfillment is what we're going to market with. We see a lot of interest from grocers. We also have a tower concept called Urbix Market for urban areas that I'll go into in a bit. But, so on-demand fulfillment, this is a top-down view of the inner workings of the system. So we have tower robots that move vertically, picking from 3 to 4 bays, grabbing totes and placing them onto waiting grid bots below, which are in the green. And then those go to the pick stations. And you can see in the upper left here, this 50 item order goes across 3 pick stations, between 15 and 17 items in each batch. And then those 3 bags of groceries are consolidated and given to a DoorDash driver or Uber Eats to get delivered to the person's home. So Urbix versus other systems. There's other systems in the market which may look familiar down here that are trying to do curbside fulfillment and last mile. We actually, initially when we started the project, we're looking at one of these systems to install before we even started, getting into the robotics piece. And it couldn't do the on-demand fulfillment because of the picking. So, we had to redesign basically the whole inner workings of the system. And so the direct access to tote, no digging, was the result. So this is our little grid bot, and you see the tower bot behind it. This was our version 1 system that we developed at Autodesk in the Seaport. So this is what we're working on now. This is our version 2 system, and this is going to be developed in the same location. We're also building a 60 tower bot, 60 grid bot system outside of Boston, going live Q1 of 2022. But you can see here the tower bot retrieves the tote, places it on the grid bot goes to the pick station, items picked. So pick stations and cooling systems. So you can see here in the back of the system, there's a decanting area for breaking down boxes and putting items directly into totes. You can see the pick station here where you're picking, scanning, and placing, and this is repeated through the order. You can see the inner cooling here. We blow cold air, we force cold air down pipes behind the totes, and then that cold air is distributed over the tote to cool for fresh and frozen items. Our software suite. So we have a cloud-based, on-premise and cloud-based. It's a hybrid system where you can track your business activity. You can see real-time, basically that simulation, but in a view, in a data visualization. So you can basically see your machine running from anywhere. Curbside performance. So these numbers were given to us from our grocery partners. They wanted our system, and a lot of the curbside design has been designed in partnership with our grocery partners. So that's why it looks the way it does, and why we have 16,000 SKUs and 7,000 totes. But they wanted to simulate 150 orders per hour, and in each of those single orders, 25 items, and they had a 12-hour operating time. So our system does that order in 73 seconds across 2 pick stations. And then we have each system has 8 pick stations for curbside. So the curbside costs. So the system itself is around 850,000 for the install. We are working with our grocery partners to do a revenue sharing agreement where we'll install the system and cover the costs, and then that cost is then amortized back over under 6 months to pay off the system. And then we have a revenue sharing agreement in place for our curb application, which I'll get to in a second. So feature proofing. So this is a concept at the moment, but we think there's, drone delivery is going to become a thing over the next 5 to 10 years. And we can integrate the drone delivery piece into our system. So you don't have to do any modifications to the MFC. The drone flies into the top, docks at, it has a little magnet on top of the drone that docks onto a plate, and it charges as it moves down, goes to the pick station, gets packed, and then flies out of the system. So, what we're trying to do with drone delivery is streamline the process for the customer, or the packing process, and making it easy for the customer to retrieve their goods. So again, this is conceptual, but what we tell grocers is if drone delivery becomes a thing, our system is ready for it. So the curb application, you could say this is similar to an Instacart, or a Shipt, where we have multiple grocers on the system, multiple automated systems, and you can order directly from the application, or you can order from the grocer's app. A little more into curb. So you can see the kiosks here. The grid bots run under here, and your items are picked up at the kiosk there. We also have we're in discussions around, instead of attaching this to a grocery store, this area could be cloud kitchens. So you could have your fast food, Burger King, Wendy's, whatever, and then you have your grocer here. Let's say it's Stop and Shop, and you can a DoorDash driver would come to the system. They may pick up a cloud kitchen order and a grocery order, and then deliver it to the customer. So we're creating a kind of a last mile e-commerce hotspot using cloud kitchens and automation for grocery. So just another concept that has come up over the last month or so. We have a little concierge here. So for additional fee, you can have a concierge put the groceries in your truck. Here's another view of the kiosk area. So this is Urbix Market. This is our tower system. So it's basically taking that curbside system and growing it to 150 feet, which is our max height. This is designed for urban cores, large metropolitan areas where you have food deserts, or land's very expensive. And the idea here is that these are pick stations, and they're in the basement. Orders go to the pick stations and then get picked up at the kiosk. So this tower system can fit 50,000 SKUs. So it's basically a full grocery store on a 900 square foot footprint. So we're focused on curbside right now, but over the next 2 to 3 years, we expect to have at least 1 or 2 Urbix markets in Boston and another metro area. So Jason Soar is here I'll go back. Jason Soar is a champion of Urbix. He does a really good kind of overview of the Urbix market concept. So I'm going to play this, and he can give a really good overview of what we're working on with Urbix market. and I think Jason says it probably more eloquent than I do, so explains it. So that's the presentation of urbix, and I guess we'll do Q&A.
Okay, thank you much. Very interesting, and I will transfer directly to David. You know the market, you know the real estate market, you know the retail market. What do you think of the concept of urbix?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fascinating. I think it's, as Lincoln said, you know, in 2016, when first starting, perhaps people weren't as ready to grasp it, but now today, you know, as things have changed, and I really appreciate the presentation. Is absolutely fascinating, and thank you to Mappic and everyone for hosting us, inviting us to participate, and of course Thomas as our moderator. One thing we have certainly seen is these shifts across the supply chains, across logistics, retail, everything that has been, it's been incredible over the past 18 plus months, you know, since the pandemic first came on, and the onset of it, and really when it first started in the Asia Pacific region, and some of the immediate disruptions to supply chain that we saw across the world from some of those impacts, and what that's meant all the way down to that last mile and to that final delivery to the clients. And what is core to our role, and where we come in, is helping guide our clients and how they can best set up and where and why their locations around the world to help serve and help get these products, these services to their clients in that time expected. And of course, down to that last mile element. I on an anecdotal level, lived in New York City for many years, and that expectation of having delivery within 10, 15 minutes, you know, wasn't becoming an expectation. And certainly to be able to do this, and to do this in areas, not just in that urban center, but to suburban and other reaches, is absolutely incredible to see. What I'm sure we'll talk about today is how our clients and how we're really working about how to get to that last mile facility as well. How to be able to get those goods to the urbix site, to be able to drive it and get it in that time, in meeting and whatever, you know, and how often needs to be refilled, repacked to that facility, and how clients are doing that across the board. But thank you again. Look forward to the conversation.
Yep. What do you think has the retailers the right strategies for this situation we have actually? So the e-commerce situation, digitization from one point, and the pandemic situation, or what they are thinking? What do you think are their real strategies for the future of retail?
So from my perspective, what we've seen, especially on the logistical side, is, you know, a number of these elements that were in place, like even some decentralized fulfillment centers and structures, and to get the goods to the customer. Historically, it was to get it to the store, have them come, feel, touch, shop, and approach it. And now today, again, either it's that click to collect, and coming at click and collect and come and pick it up, and not have to have that full experience. And then as well as that e-commerce direction. And again, there are many things, many of our clients that were working in this direction, more on a pilot basis, that have now seen that ramp up in real time. And on that decentralized model, it's you know, not necessarily abandon what the optimization and the calibration of supply chains that they've been working on a global perspective, but when those particular markets, down to particular store level, and then as well, of course, to the e-commerce direction as well.
Do you think that there will be new players in this area of retail? So Lincoln is one of them, perhaps, or others, as we saw it for Tesla in the automotive sector. That means traditional players are having competition by IT companies. Do you see this development in the retail area also?
100%. Tech is the ultimate disruptor, and has been, and as we've seen in the recent kind of generation of elements and of quick changes that we've seen. You know, even looking at a couple of those that Lincoln mentioned that are part of this, and part of this overall vertical of an Uber, or DoorDash. We were really the tech industry were the ones that came in and built these products, built these applications, and the process and model to be able to do that. And I think we'll see that across the board in the retail side as well. Folks that are truly innovators and visionaries like Lincoln in building this out to disrupt it. Now, we're also going to see our traditional brick and mortar retail businesses also, getting into the mix, or perhaps, acquiring in order to be in this field. And even some of your traditional, like in IKEA, you are starting to see them develop into even just click to collect, perhaps into even some more on the e-commerce side. We're also seeing some disruption models from other brick and mortar retail stores and some of our clients, that are looking at micro fulfillment centers within city centers, even on high street, so that they can be able to deliver for their client. Now, perhaps the client isn't going to be able to, the customer, to pick it up at that store, but that customer, if they want it and it's not there available on high street, they would be able to figure out a way to get that to them within a time. Is that same day? Is that next day? Obviously, that's going to depend on what the value of that product chain is, what that type of product is, and what that customer expectation is, but certainly driving it more and more. And ultimately, I think as Lincoln is going to create that expectation of even 15 minutes.
Yeah, I also have to add, I do feel the trend is inevitable just based off of the economics alone. So when you can put basically a grocery store on, with the kiosks and everything, like 3,000 to 4,000 square feet with pickup and, 15-minute delivery. A traditional grocery store is on 50,000 square feet. So the land costs alone for that 50,000 square foot grocery store are around $20 million, where we can build, and that's not even what they're building. So add on another 8 to 10 for the building. So you're looking at 30 million all in for a grocery store. Our urbix market, fully automated, curbside pickup, last mile delivery, the larger, systems, we're looking at, $10 million. So, and you're eliminating the need for walking around for 45 minutes to an hour with a shopping cart and all of this. So it just, it seems like, based off on the economics alone, it's not gonna, this trend isn't gonna stop. It's gonna, if anything, it's gonna accelerate, and then it's gonna become the dominant kind of, it'll be the everyday thing in 10 years. So.
Okay. Perhaps also another point, actually we talk about high street, and retailers are located there where the peoples are working. And in the future, also for the short terms, for delivery we have, retailers must be, from our thought, nearer to the customer, to the living rooms of them, so the living situations. Do you see also such a development? David?
So we are going to say, when it comes to workers and it comes to the overall workforce, we had challenges before the pandemic in finding workers and finding that right talent and sustainable talent for the future. And now going through the pandemic, it is even harder today than it was before. There's a number of different factors that come into play on that, but certainly that overall competition for workers and for those workers of tomorrow. So continuing to go in the direction and some of these trends, and as Lincoln has said, we were trending in these directions already, and it has now sped up and expedited, and that awareness of some of these cost advantages, the time advantages, the site and location, and certainly want to come and revisit that again in a bit, because that is a great point. But also is being able to serve with the people that need to be working in this direction. And frankly, we can't find them. It is becoming more and more of a challenge. Overall logistics operations around the country, and those that, again, in kind of part of that centralized or even a decentralized model, where we're getting it to that, whatever that large fulfillment center is, to ultimately serve this last mile or direct to the consumer, right now still requires significant workforces. In some elements, especially in the big box fulfillment centers, we'll see 2, 3, maybe 4,000 employees, and being able to find those and retain and train and maintain is going to get even more and more of a challenge, especially as more demand gets out there for these types of workers. And so being able to apply the right analytics, to find those individuals to train, and of course, at the same time, be investing in developing technologies that can help within the workforce, to ultimately be able to, if it's robotics and AI and others, to help streamline and make those operations more efficient. And then as well, then to train and build that pipeline for those young people to become the engineers, and those that work and mechanics and work on those robotics and the AI within the center as well, to be able to get those products to the last mile, to that direct to consumer.
I wanted a little bit focus on the suburbs of cities, because I think for the replenishment of homes, of living, the normal stuff you need every day, we have to have new structures also for serving in quick time. So quick commerce is a new type of commerce, and it's not e-commerce, but it's quick commerce. And Uber and DoorDash are also looking for this. So we have, for a real estate side, we have the high street, but high street is more presentation than delivery. And in the suburbs, we will have the delivery of the goods. That's something what we see in the actual situation. So for the timing, we have still 15 minutes left. Are there any questions from others for our speakers? So I don't see anything, so we will continue. For the situation of the retail, what will be the changes for another point of view of automatization? Do you think this automatization will take place in the next 2 years, or in the next 5 years, or in the next 10 years? What's your expectation? David, I think Lincoln is quite optimistic that this will be in the next 2 years.
Yeah, I would love to hear Lincoln's answer to that too. But from my perspective, it is certainly, if we had asked 2 years ago, something that's 5 to 10 years out, at least. But I think that time frame has ramped up. I think the only thing that is necessarily one of the things that is slowing it down perhaps is on the regulatory side. When we talked about drones and drone delivery, while that technology is there, in many cases it is proven out, it is still not necessarily facing all the regulatory approvals, especially on a national or on a global basis. The other is also customer acceptance. And Lincoln talked about some of the investment and some of the driving into it, but it's also that customer acceptance and that customer demand for that last mile, for that home delivery, for the not only the e-commerce, which has been building, but of course that quick commerce. And from everything we're there and what the pandemic has pushed forward has expedited a lot of that expectation, and that demand for it. And I'll say even from building out on the suburban side, some of the different hub and spoke type elements, decentralize even some of that supply chain to be able to get to those suburbs and not just go to the center cities or into the cores, but also be able to be out and utilize that from a real estate perspective, finding those different sites and those opportunities to do so, and those workers to serve and to operate that facility. I think as we continue to build out that expectation there on an anecdotal basis, as mentioned, I lived in the city in Brooklyn before, and 15 minutes was the expectation to be able to have groceries delivered to our house, and in fact guaranteed 15-minute or less. In the suburbs, it is not there yet, obviously, to be there, but there are, and as you're starting to see in many global markets, where we have these large fulfillment centers, that delivery opportunity is still same day or even within a couple hours, and whether that is coming directly in a click and collect, or is coming from a retail store directly to the consumer, or even directly from that fulfillment center that can serve a last mile or more defined last mile. And then of course, not just putting it all on the retail, but those other providers that are in the mix and continuing to invest and expand, like an Uber, like a DoorDash, and being able to do that in not just an urban, but also in a suburban environment.
Okay. Another thing we see in the logistics area is the change from the supply chain view of the demand chain view. That means to deliver only this what is asked from the customer. And there are also new technologies as 3D printing, for example, that means to produce on demand what's asked for. And are the retailers ready for this change of strategy? That means to think from the customer, really from the customer, and not from the purchase market, and also under the point of view of sustainability.
So I'll say that first. So we absolutely see retail market and some of our retail clients that are driving to meet this demand, but trying to find ways that they can do it and in a sustainable, economical approach to be able to do so. For example, one of our clients is one of the world's largest textile manufacturers, and on the clothing side, and this was, again, a pre-pandemic direction, but it's certainly been expedited over the past 18 months. And was going into it, but was to ensure that for particular clothing lines, and to be able to meet demands that shift in not a matter of years, certainly, or even a matter of months, but can shift within a matter of weeks. And as part of that supply chain optimization and being able to meet it from a logistical perspective, it's not necessarily that hard to change the spool of yarn to be able to, from a certain color to a certain demand or a certain type of fabric. But what has been the challenge is the supply chain. And of course, even more impacted today to be able to get it to the client, especially if it's coming from certain markets, like from Asia Pacific region, coming to the Americas or going to Western Europe, for example. And so what we've actually seen is more production than returning, not necessarily the same as an onshoring type of concept, but closer to within the region to be able to meet those timeframes and to be able to overall optimize not just the supply chain and logistics, but the overall production footprint to be able to meet that demand, and to be able to service the company. So for example, in this, a large, multi-billion-dollar customer into their customers in the retail side, going into e-commerce today, but most of this was brick and mortar prior to the pandemic. But the demand changing for a particular type of color would have taken 3 to 4 months to change that on the shelf. By bringing it within region and that production, and not on a massive scale, but on enough to be sustainable and as well as to meet that demand and price assumptions, we're able to bring it to the region and cut that supply chain down to 3 weeks to be able to get it on the shelves. And I think we'll continue to see more of that built in, of course, on a sustainable, on an economical, and on that logistical ability to do so as well.
Okay, thanks. Lincoln, drone delivery we spoke about. Drones are not only flying drones, but we have also drones which are walking on the streets or even as small boats. What do you expect for this? That's a regulative question, that's evident. But with slow-moving cars, for example, it would be possible also today. What do you think about the automatization of this process?
Yeah, I think from a regulatory standpoint, I think it's just proving that you can make drone delivery safe for the end consumer. I think, getting our concept with drone delivery and these ports on, that you would install at your home and all of this, it keeps the drones away from people, away from, the interacting with kind of edge cases on the ground. So it's all about safety, I think, with drone delivery, because the technology is there. You could do drone delivery now. You could build, the technology for the urbix drone system. It's all there. There's nothing that has to be invented. So it's showing that it's safe, and showing that you can execute on something of this scale. But I do think, I don't think in the future that you can have drone delivery without micro fulfillment. I think they're one and the same. To do rapid deployment of drones to your home multiple times a day, to get those drones packed in an efficient manner, they have to be going to an MFC. It's not going to work by, I know Walmart's trying to like put a truck in the front of their stores and like do it out of the truck. And it's just like, to actually make drone delivery possible, it requires a lot more thinking through the whole application than just, trying to, one-off, stuffing drones and sending them up in the air. So the MFCs are going to play a major role in drone delivery over the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay. For finishing, I want to ask David a question concerning augmented reality and the presentation of goods. What do you think could augmented reality make for the presentation of goods at your home and not in the shopping center, for example?
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible direction. Again, I think it is there. The technology is there today. And in many ways, I mean, it is incredible already what it is, and whether or not from some of the largest of the box and brick and mortar retailers that are driving it, but then, all the way down to many of more your boutique and even artisanal type of retail providers that are being able to utilize it. I think one of the elements to be able to do that is again, it's just customer demand and customer use of utilizing those types of tools, and even knowing that they're available and that awareness of them and how to best use them. And I want to go back to also just one of the interesting points to it too, and that Lincoln had brought up earlier on some of the space and the utilization and that real estate aspect of what a large grocery store would require versus being able to come down and have a micro fulfillment and some of these different types of centers. And what some of these elements where historically it was that ability to come in and touch and feel and walk through the store and pick and pack, and less of that demand to do so. So one of those elements though is what do we do with all of that real estate we have today that is tied to retail and has been there, and how to best, we don't used to use the word depose, but reuse and really re-stratify that. And we mentioned earlier in the suburbs. And one of those ways where we have these large shopping centers, we have even on High Street and others, is what are other ways that we can utilize that space? And I think certainly one of those is continued as a retail, to be able to use it in a realm that can still allow even some of that feel and touch, but certainly to be able to go in and some of the models that Lincoln showed in his product and design. But also for that, just direct logistics and micro fulfillment center as well. They are already well placed within the communities, within these suburban markets to serve clients, and perhaps from that drone landing pad per se that could be there, and utilizing that as logistics. We're seeing it certainly in the States and Europe, where we're seeing those large shopping centers, those being used as even Amazon micro fulfillment centers today, whether it's even just as a parking lot. We're also seeing it for other uses, and for some of our clients, co-working is another area we're seeing more and more of being able to use these spaces. I use that term hub and spoke model earlier as far as retail, but even from a work perspective, we're seeing that more and more on officing and hoteling of individuals, of being able to reuse that retail space and making, even into that mixed use type of facility where you have these others. I saw recently WeWork announcing, where they are coming up with some new partners to be able to do that on that retail side, and revisioning, what that means to drive it to. And ultimately, even to that retail business, finding these other sources, not necessarily for additional revenue on that space, but also how they can drive more individuals and more awareness to their products and to that purchasing element by having them in close proximity to the element. And I think that's something we have some very neat, exciting projects we're working on right now that and coming online here in the next few quarters. That'll be, certainly as we see it, innovative and disruptive as well to that space and to how real estate and retail kind of can converge into the future.
Okay, so thank you very much. I will add perhaps one point. Digitization implicates also data, and we need also data centers. We need a space for data centers, so it's also a potential use of these real estates. But thank you very much for all your impacts and your points you mentioned. This was very interesting for me to hear this, and I'm happy to have you in this session, and thank you very much. We are close in time, we have to finish, and thank you very much both for this participation. Thanks you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.